In Truth and in Spirit World of Worship Fellowship, iTiS World of Worship Fellowship. Today is 16th of June, the year of our Lord 2025, and being Monday, it means we discuss the top stories of the sorry. We discuss a topical question, a Q&A session. Yes, so feel free to join us on any Monday. If you're listening to this on YouTube or via Telegram or WhatsApp, feel free to share a topic you'd like us to discuss. So if you have a question about God, about faith, religion matters, marriage, sex, prophecy, theology, philosophy, feel free to share your question with us and we'll be happy to make an attempt. Yes, so today being Monday, we have a topic of discussion which is the information age and truth. Okay. It is said we're in an information age. Now, if you ask me, I would say we are in an era of too much information, actually. Sometimes we don't even know what to do with it. There are now conditions called information overload and so on and so forth. Anyway, we're in an information age. And if you like, really, that's an age where there seems to be a lot of information out there. Of course, we're going to define what that exactly means. There seems to be a lot of information on any subject. If you go to Google, for example, and do a search even about the term information itself, you'd probably get 5 million results trying to define or to explain what that means. So, what does somebody do with that kind of information? I'm told if you go, if YouTube as we have it now, if you just decided to watch all the videos on YouTube non-stop, you'd actually die without finishing all the videos. That's how much content there is on YouTube alone. I've not talked about TikTok. I've not talked about all the other streaming platforms, Vimeo and all that. So basically, there's a lot of information out there about all sorts of subjects. That obviously means one thing. How does somebody discern what the truth is amidst all this information? Most of it is even conflicting. So how does somebody who's just reading make sense of what they're reading? How do they discern truth from deception? And so on and so forth. Isaiah always likes to say people need to be taught how to navigate even these search engines like Google and others, because there's a lot of information. Most of it contradicts, most of it lies. They're telling lies. And because information sharing was democratized, and by that I mean they are no longer gatekeepers. In traditional media, we had gatekeepers who are the editors. So as a reporter, you'd go to the field, or an investigative journalist, collect whatever you're collecting, bring it to a newsroom where there's an editor, sometimes two. They go through it, they throw away some, pick up some, and then publish. Okay, so those are what I call the gatekeepers. Now, opening a YouTube channel takes half a second. I just click new channel. What name do you want? Da, 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 and I have a channel. Cameras are cheap. I can buy a camera, I can even use my phone and start spewing all sorts of stuff, scientific or otherwise, and so on and so forth. So with that kind of scenario, how do we even classify information? What makes something information? Okay. I think that was the first question from Peter, who's our moderator. What makes something information? Does the source of information matter anyway? Okay. And I'd like to add how can you even vet these sources of information? Okay. What must we base on to consider or disconsider what we hear, read, or see? And I think that's what I've been saying. How do we tell the truth from the lies with all this information? Okay. Especially from social media. Everybody seems to have an opinion about everything. If you went and searched in anything, everybody has an opinion, and so on and so forth. So today we're here to attempt this very, very big animal, if you ask me. How do we, first of all, what is information? What qualifies it to be information? And then, of course, we'll talk about sources. How do we say this source is credible? This source is not credible. Okay. Many times, what we call credible sources are those who said it first. Oh, like so and so said, and then everyone starts quoting. Oh, like so and so said, like so and so said, like the other channel. Many times on social media, it depends on the number of views. If something has been viewed many times, we tend to think it is truth. So how should we vet credibility of even the sources? Is it even possible in the information age? And so on and so forth. So that's what we'll be attempting today. Welcome aboard. Peter, can you talk now? I wanted to hand over to you. Just
I'm
don't know if
still
I've done justice.
in an
You're
impossible
still on the road.
situation. I'm still in an impossible situation to
All
moderate.
right, all right, all right, all right. Let's proceed. So yeah, so that's what you're going to talk about. Information, of course, information has to be separated from what we call data or even knowledge. So what is knowledge? What is information? What is an opinion? What is a fact? How do we tell these things apart? Are they talking about the same thing? Okay, somebody help me. So let's just attempt a definition of information. Omichwezi Rutemana, what do you think information means really?
Jet, I
It's a
think
hard
maybe
one.
you, yeah, it's a hard one, eh?
Okay, let me ask the philosopher here. We might have a definition. Philosopher Mutavaz, what is information according to you? You can also help us separate it from
Yeah.
knowledge or even data.
Information is processed data.
Now we shall go down to data. What is data?
So first of all, information is processed data, and data is a collection of reports of what has happened realistically, what has been thought that it happened. So the first angle is from the eyewitness. The second angle is from those who are not eyewitness, but those who heard from the eyewitness, or those even who heard from the 6 references after the eyewitness. So that's how you collect data. From the scene of SCENE, you collect data from that scene. And you also collect data from the seer or from the victim. Sometimes data is collected even from the villain. So whenever there's an event, there is data scattered all over there. Now, collecting that data, processing it, and forming it, okay? Now, that collection of that data creates what we call information. Therefore, information is processed data that intimates a certain kind of meaning from a particular context, and of course with some intention. That last part, people don't mind it, but it's very, very crucial. Every information is intentional. Every information is intentional. So I hope that can help. So the other whole thing of the event, it's about that geography. Where did that thing happen? Okay, who were there? Okay, when did it happen? What are the assumed causes of whatever happened? How did it affect that environment, and how did it happen? Now that is Those are just subsections of data, or actually structures of placing the scattered data at the event. So when you have that, all that processed, then there's the meaning of the author. Then there's also the meaning of the audience, and also there's the context of the scene and the event. Then there's the context of the author. Then there's also the context of the audience. All these things are very, very, very important. And as information is processed again and again and again from one person to another, the same information about the same event, that information takes shapes due to the intention of the informants and the consumers of that information, given their context, who they are, where they are, etc. So that is how information works.
Okay, that is quite a definition. But what I've understood is, first of all, there's an event or a certain reality, part of reality that people are observing. Okay, so meaning the person or the people who are collecting that data, as you call it.
And sometimes it is not even reality, but it is assumed. Sometimes it is an assumption. That assumption also can produce information. Yes.
That's what makes it even more complicated. Yeah. So that assumed reality or even reality itself. There are people who are observing and using other senses probably. And then they are picking out all this data, raw data, as you call it. Then making sense of it. So can I say information is drawing meaning out of reality or perceived reality?
No,
and that meaning is, of course,
that is the effect of the information. It's not what it information is, just the other data, processed data. Now this other stage of drawing meaning now that is now making meaning out of an existing information. This is why I keep warning people that before you are exposed to any information, have some training.
How to derive meaning out of that information.
How to derive meaning, but before even you derive meaning, you have to understand the meaning, aka the intention of the data collector. Because the person who was exposed to the data before that data was processed did what we call data analysis. And what they are giving you now is their analysis of the data. That is why in archaeology we say that after you have read from an archaeologist, visit the site yourself. So that you can be face to face with the data. And now, in relation to the former information that you had, and the meaning and the intention, given the intention of the former author or writer or former archaeologist who was there at the site before you, now you can use that and also come up with your meaning contextually. Now, now this is how serious information is.
Okay, a question maybe. So does all data is all data empirical? Can't we have abstract data, even abstract information, and therefore abstract meaning? Is data always verifiable?
No, that's why I told you that sometimes it is not the right, but it is an assumption. Now that's what we call abstract. People assume that there is this and this. For instance, let me actually use my field. We Christians have claimed that there is God. Okay? And people are asking us, where is that God? And we cannot point to that God. Do you know what we do? We point them to data from event scenes. Professor, you said you can't speak. Leave us alone.
Peter, please keep your peace. Keep
Leave
your
us
peace.
alone. Let us continue our orphanage because you left us here as well. So and now do you understand that example that I'm bringing?
So you're saying we point them to data, huh? Now
We
go
point
on.
them to data, and the data that we point them at the data that we have collected from existing events or scenes. That is why normally, whenever you talk about the existence of God, you will hear things like creation and evolution. Why? Because creation and evolution are two ideologies that rotate around an existing reality. And the data we get from there, once that data is rightly processed, okay, it is going to either to confirm to the previous conclusion that there is God, or to dismiss the previous conclusion that there is God. And then we will ably conclude that there is no God. We are using that data. But you see, we started with an abstract, there is God. So we deduce from that abstract reasoning, and then we go to the level of now arguing that while we assume there is God, we need now to provide data to reconstruct our abstract, okay? And then bring it into some meaningful position given the data at our disposal. So that's how the thing goes.
Now, the other thing I'm thinking about is it is possible for two people to look at the same data and draw two informations, quote unquote, or meanings out of it. Is that possible?
Exactly. That's why I told you that in archaeology, we say that once you read from an archaeologist, once you read an archaeologist report, and the scene is still in existence, go to that scene. In archaeology, we call it sites. Go to the site yourself and look at the remains. Look at how the site looks like. Consider how it has been abused and how it has been preserved. Then compare how the site looks like, how it was reported in the data and information of the previous archaeologist who wrote you, and then also see what you have seen, what they did not see. Then make your report. And in most cases, your report might not look like other reports about the same site. Why? Because you are all feeding information, processing information. You've done your personal or independent data analysis. Now, these are the results. These are the conclusions. Throw them into the marketplace. When they are challenged, have a defense and explain your reasoning why. That's how we draw meaning. That's how we come to an understanding. And that's how some positions are now created. Hence, the language now starts opinion, fact. What is the other term?
Opinion, fact, knowledge.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Could how do these terms emerge? Opinion, idea, fact.
They emerge from the existing ability and context and circumstances of data analysis and processed information. That's where they emerge from. For example, a scientist, okay, does not have a scientific opinion. A scientist, the least he can have or she can have is a hypothesis or a theory. Majorly, a scientist is going to give facts about scientific matters. But a social worker might have an opinion on scientific issues. Because they are social workers, so they have an opinion.
Does an opinion, does that make an opinion lesser information and a fact more information or greater information?
No, the difference is in the procession. An opinion lacks the measures and the terms and the structures of processed information. A fact.
So
Okay, yeah, go first.
no, I was just going to chip in and say some people there are terms used even regarding an opinion. Some say qualified opinion, others say unqualified opinion. What then are they saying?
Qualified opinion, they mean that someone who is an authority in the field, okay, gave a view that he has not yet researched about. But because he's an authority in the field, his opinion is closer to the processes. For instance, let me give you an example since you are Christians. In the book of Corinthians, let me use that. I know my brother Tembana hates this nonsense of the Bible, but let's use it as an example. So I don't want to bore my young brother. I love him. In the book of Corinthians, Paul said that those who are already married, I tell you, not the Holy Spirit, but I tell you. So Paul is giving an opinion, but a qualified one. Why is it an opinion? An opinion, it is him speaking. Why is it a qualified one? It is within the context of what the Spirit has been talking and communicating. What is the moral authority of Paul making that qualified opinion? He's a theologian. He's a minister to that Spirit that has been communicating. So normally that's what they mean, that this one is a qualified opinion. Why? Because the person that gives this opinion is an authority in that field. However, a qualified opinion is lesser than a hypothesis and lesser than a theory in that very field. Why? Because theories and hypotheses in independent disciplines are structured and have the instruments of that field to come to conclusions, authoritative conclusions at least.
Okay, so now the other one, which of course the bigger question now is then what is truth in all this ruckus that we are dealing with? So where is truth now? Is it at the beginning of establishing the data, or it is the all-encompassing thing where we are trying to point to it with all this processing we're doing? Where does truth stand and what is it anyway? In this context, of course.
I have paused now from there so that I don't bore you, unless if you want me to continue, but people have here switched on.
No, before you continue, I want to bring in Rutembana. Peter, hold your guns. No, Rutembana, switch on your mic. Because I think the topic is actually very applicable to Rutembana, because it normally says everyone has an opinion. Muslims are saying they're right. Christians are saying they're right. Buddhists have their thing. So now, of course, I'm not trying to Christianize this whole debate, but Muchwez, how are you feeling about this discussion so far? Data, information, knowledge, opinions, etc. etc.
No, no. I'm actually I'm following and I was just listening because we are still at the definitions. So what Isaiah has described, it is it is close to what other people actually define, and really there's no much big difference in what he has said.
Okay, we shall get deeper, don't worry. Peter, you wanted to come in?
So how how should, is that what I would like to ask? Okay, we have talked about the factors that make information. Number one, the experiencer, that is the one to whom an event has been exposed. Number two, the context of the experiencer, the data, the context of the data, and so on. If there is absence of any of these factors, how can data become information? And who says this is information and this is not information? Whether opinion, whether fact, and so on. Is information independent of the experiencer or of the informers? Or informers have an effect on this information?
That's for Isaiah.
Yeah. If it is for me, I have not actually understood what he's asking. What does it mean in the absence of what? That's where I got stuck. In the absence of what?
For example, if is information independent of the one who experiences it or of one who forms it? In other words, is information already informed so that we discover it, or we put together certain structures to form it?
Information is the product of the event and the experience and experiment. That is, the information is the product of that. So when people get involved and then they start collecting all that data and then processing it, then they are forming information.
Okay. If the information is God and God is there, but God has not probably spoken, and certain people experience events and come to a conclusion that such and such a thing, there is a super being, there is a supreme being responsible for that. But this supreme being has not said a thing about being there. But experiencers have concluded there must be. How do we qualify that to be information?
Saying is part of communication. Not saying is communication. Doing is communication. So whether that being has spoken or not, but there is data that that is related to that being, then our task now is to challenge the data to see whether it has anything to do with the silent being or not. So information is not restricted to speech. Like I said, data has got speech reports, data has got mute reports, data has got living objects and moving objects. Therefore, data has got non-living or innate objects. And all those objects are communicative and promoting data, and therefore towards the goal of processing and coming up with information.
Maybe Isaiah, what is data in let's say Uganda?
Okay. Data in Uganda.
Over actually, sorry, I've asked you. What is data in Uganda?
Data in Luganda only.
Data yebi oba onakitegeera kale kantobe bibeera ebikuŋŋaanye bye twetegereza ne bibaako kye bitugamba. Kampa ekyokulabirako.
Kati ebikuŋŋaanye onnyonnyodde data collection akubuuzizza data.
Anti data era bikuŋŋaanye tolina bw'obyawula.
Oyina bw'obyawula ebikuŋŋaanye ebiki? Pedson, data by'ebintu.
Aha. Kakati omanyi
Ebintu ebikolebwa n'ebitakolebwa n'ebikola ye kibayita data bintu. Kakati ebikuŋŋaanye ye data collection.
Because you know where I came in at that point is I wanted to try to understand the point where you said when something is not spoken, still there's a fact about it.
Yeah, it still is communicative.
Because now that's what I wanted to understand. Now, for example, if there's some things that we probably don't know about, and how do we what is that we don't know about? Is that information or is that data?
It is data.
Okay, so does that become now the data? Is it on the one? Does it become data on the person who has who knows about it, or it is data because it is in existence?
It is data because it is in existence. Now, data analysis now, that's why we have data analysis, because data is always there. There is always data there. I'll give you an example of something that you like and you know. On a crime scene, the police always communicates. We found there a panga, but it did not have any blood. But there was a panga there and a pot. But the panga does not speak. The pot doesn't speak. But you see, for observing beings like human beings, the innate beings and the non-speaking agents are very important because that data is important.
So is a panga a data or an object?
It is a data on a scene. It is a data. That's why they say we found a panga there.
And a panga will be an object, but not data.
Now you are thinking of data in the context of computer, already that which has been written and documented. Pedson, you asked, listen, Pedson, you asked data chechi mu Luganda. We told you data byebintu which are at the scene.
Kakati panga gitwale mu nyumba nga teri ku scene katebeera ki?
And you are reasoning out of...
Giteke mu nnimiro kati.
Do you remember that we talked about an event, that whenever there's an event, then we collect data? We are speaking within that context. For instance, where I'm seated right now, there is a curtain. But this curtain is not communicative. It's not even data for me. But if someone visited me and looked at my curtains, okay, they will, because they have an intention and they have a goal, they want to understand maybe the kind of person I am, or actually my taste, then these curtains are data. Because the event and the goal and the purpose is to find out what is the taste of this man. So don't say, when you take the panga in the house, then what is it? No. Data is not everything which is everywhere. Data is something that is in a circumstance where there's an event and where there's an intention. Remember my definition.
So for data to be significant, there must be an intention
preceding it.
Yes, and within that's why I told you about the where, the who, the what.
Yeah, can I come in a bit?
Please.
Yeah, let me add on what Isaiah is saying. It is what Mr. Rutembana is saying is is to connote also that data. I mean, that is evidence. Evidence can be used for data. For example, if there's an event or something, the panga can contribute to the evidential data. Okay, that the panga was found here and here, so and so had been killed. So it forms part of the data that is being collected for that particular event being investigated. For me, I wanted to just put one point clear that even in that example of such a panga, I mean, from the beginning of this discussion, there was an issue: should we trust every data with all this enormous amount of data on the internet, information flowing? What should we do? And for me, my straight answer to that is that today we should not believe everything we see we should not believe every data, okay, until this data is actually authenticated in terms of that particular event, in terms of what it's trying to describe. Data has to be perturbed before we hurry to forward. For example, many people on social media.
We've lost him. Bob.
Bob has dropped off.
Yeah, I have also lost him.
Yeah, as he comes back, I don't know if we'd be jumping ahead if we went into
forward.
the.
Yes, you know. So we have to be very careful when we are on the internet. Even we know that I know people who did their research in terms of now really collecting data, but they never went and collected data. They were doing PhDs, probably they were doing masters or school projects. They sat in their room, generated the data, and published the paper. So I mean, when you find such a paper published, but the data was not authentic. So this is why we perturb the information that is being shared to see whether it is authentic, if it's true. We all saw the videos of, this is going into politics a bit, we saw videos of Bobby Wine being aligned with all these ammunitions, all these guns. And that was data, evidential data. Oh, we have found this in his room. But is this authentic? Should we believe that? Or are you just trying to set someone up? Or are you just, kind of tampering with data? There's also what we call tampering with data. Someone finds data, evidential data, they tamper with it. Now you cannot use it because it is no longer authentic data. We all heard of recent recordings of basically trying to procure whatever, machinery to plot and kill the president. And Andrew Mwenda comes out, and said, oh, because the recording was there, we had it. And he said, oh, I sent it to my colleagues at was it Harvard or what? Like he mentioned some authenticated institution where he has a colleague who said the recording was actually authenticated, that they said it was true. Like for him to say that, okay, I'm aware that all these recordings can be fabricated, but I have gone a step further to try and authenticate this. Now we cannot know if what he's even saying is true. This is where Mr. Salubide came in to say, the person who is bringing this information, also we have to think about them. So these are the things we have to really take care of when we are perturbing data, when we are receiving data. I mean, we are receiving consuming information on the internet, on YouTube. We just know there's a lot of faking. People want views, people want likes. So they go on and fake anything. So this is where we have to be very careful. So for me, I really want to, before I forward or before I really take in someone's information, I want to perturb it. I want to ensure that it's authentic, and authentic information is really clear. It's evidential, We've had people who say, I sold my 3 dogs and bought, these calves. You've heard, how did you become rich? That they sold, you remember that story of this guy, But I mean, today the guy is crying. They are not paying me. So whichever information is thrown out there, we can easily perturb it and say, no, this guy is actually lying. This cannot be true. So let's focus on that issue of developing that ability to authenticate this data we consume. Otherwise, you can follow lies, you can be hanged, you can even defend something that is indefendable because you found it somewhere and someone shared it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All your examples of Thursday, I don't know why, but anyway, he has kind of launched us into, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but the issue of credibility and sources, which I think was the second question on the list. How do we vet these sources of the information we are consuming? I think Bob alluded to some of that. When we say credibility, credible source, I think journalists like to use that. A credible source said, a person close to the matter who did not want to be named said. You know that terminology. What are they doing? Is being close to the source, does that make you credible, for example? If they say NTV likes to quote, there's a guy in Makere, every time there's a political discussion, they call him Professor Mwembetsi Awahu, that guy. I don't know what he gave NTV. Every time there's a political question, they interview the guy. Professor of political science at Makere says, and then they quote him. You scientists, Bob, like to say, you must publish your stuff in, I don't know how many journals to be considered a professor or authentic. So there are journals where you need to publish your information or findings for that matter.
They're called high impact journals.
So if you don't publish there, then what you're telling us is we doubt it. All these I'm driving at credibility and even trying to identify sources of information. You've rightly said, in the information age, if someone has more views on his YouTube channel, most likely they will be taken as an authority. If you come to iTiS with 30 views every week on every video, maybe not. What are these guys saying? And so on and so forth. So let us go into that part of sources, credibility. Peter, your hand is up. I don't know if you want to answer that question or you wanted to talk about something else.
No, but Bob had invoked something in me. Is information to be believed or to be known?
That's a good question. That's a good one. But let's first talk about credibility of sources or sources of information. How do we vet these sources, Isaiah? Are there tools, or it is God, the Holy Spirit himself, who just helps you to discern some of these things?
They are tools.
Huh?
They are tools. But you see, those tools vary, but on particular fields. For instance, let us start with what we know or what we have heard about. When you feel sick, how do you feel sick?
The body communicates.
Okay. Now, what the body has given you, it has given you unprocessed data.
Fever, headache.
Now, the only thing that you have is that you are sick. You're not feeling good, and then in your ability, by your feelings, you have a conclusion that you are sick. However, you don't know what you are sick from or what you are suffering from, do you?
No. Sometimes you can attempt a guess and say, hey, I felt like this when I last had malaria, or I felt like this when I...
Which the doctors actually advise against.
Yes.
Now, what you do, you now want now to verify the information at hand. Information, seek. So there is a structure, and that structure, you go to the doctor. You talk to the doctor. Have a conversation with the doctor. After you've had that conversation, The doctor also does not only give a qualified opinion. No, he has also to verify the information that you have given him that you are sick. So he takes a sample of blood, punches it into the machines of the lab, and then they find out what is in your blood. That might be the reason of the feeling that you have. So there's that process. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that process is not different from even other fields. Any field that you can place on the table, there are ways on how to find out. So there is data analysis, yes, but there's also information analysis. You need to find out that information analysis and then analyze it. There are structures for that in each and every field. And I don't think there's a universal one, but the idea is one: information must be analyzed and therefore confirmed that what it is stating is what it is.
Okay, and then before I forget Peter's question, is information meant to be believed or known? Let's first get that one also out of there.
Yeah, that is two things. It is first of all a choice, okay, and it is then in other areas not a choice. Okay, it is a choice for those who know how to analyze information. Now, if you have the ability to analyze the information at hand, if you have the ability to analyze the information at hand, then you qualify to choose to believe or not. But if you don't have the ability to analyze the information at hand, you don't have a choice. If you don't believe, it is not a choice that you have made. If you believe, it is neither a choice. Is that too complex?
Come again.
The question is information, okay? Do we have, you repeat the question again?
Is information meant to be believed or known?
Now, first of all, the intention of the informer, okay, is to make you believe.
So information drives towards belief.
The intention of the informer, whoever informs you, has an intention, and the purpose is for you to believe. However, you, to have the choice to believe or not to believe, you have to have the ability to analyze that information the informer is giving you. Do you have that ability? Yes. Now, believing or not believing is a choice. But if you don't have that ability, isn't it? You do not have the choice to believe. No. If you don't have the ability to analyze the information and then you believe, how have you come to the conclusion of believing? Do you even have the ability to analyze what is before you? Answer, no. If you don't believe, how have you not believed? And what are you not believing? Do you understand what you are not believing? No. That is where the terms that you know very well apply. Disinformation, misinformation. What is the other?
Normally, those two: misinformation and disinformation.
You don't have the ability to analyze the information. So just because the person who asked the question used the term meant is is biasing here. I hope he didn't mean meant. He meant intend. But if he says meant, then he's saying that Information it has that absolute power. So each and every information we are to believe. No. Information is there to be analyzed. The first thing to do with information at your disposal is to analyze, to make sure that you understand it. And in the event that you don't understand it, you don't have that choice.
Okay, I see two hands up. Let me start with Muchwezi, then I'll go to Bob. Muchwezi?
Yes, thank you. Now, from where we have reached now, I'll just give a scenario. In our profession, we prepare information, what we call the financial statements, and even from the same procedure that Bob was actually saying, we even get another professional accountant whom we call an auditor to verify this information. Financial statements are audited, and that independent auditor puts an opinion on what he has seen after. So then the information can be believed or can be recognized by the users. Now, usually you would find that if you pick the financial statements from any entity, you find that this information is somehow agreeing, even when when these auditors come, they can have like a disagreement here and there with a certain standard, but then they would eventually reach a consensus by the time these accounts are finally published. Now, that is from our profession. When you go to the doctors, if you have headache, you go to Zambia, they probably put you in an MRI scan, and they will say that seeing this on your brain, you go to IHK. Some other things would be like close the opinion of a doctor in Zambia, IHK. When it comes to the field of Isaiah will interpret something in the Bible. Then in Kenya, Raymond will also interpret it in his way. Then wrestle will also do the same. Now the user who is supposed to make a rational decision becomes confused because Isaiah is saying this, Raymond is saying this, and Rebecca is saying this. Yet, ideally, if the data analysis or the information analysis is the same, it will almost draw you to a relatively similar conclusion. Now, that is where the final verdict is that that is your opinion, that is Isaiah's opinion, and that's where the breakaway starts from. So the analysis becomes a problem on that, and that is where it now no longer becomes when Isaiah talked about qualified opinion, actually no, it's yet to say qualified. These are actually terms from our side. When an auditor is very okay with the financials, it is called unqualified opinion. When the auditor is not happy, it is called qualified opinion. So, but the what the auditor is doing on your financials, these are factual because the accounts, they're almost the same standards that are used. But now the things to do with code, the differing opinions, that's where the problem is. Sorry, I don't know if my thing makes sense.
For me, it does. Moderator, can I say something?
Sure.
What we suffer in our field is what the Enoch Muyanjas suffer in their field. Enoch Muyanja is a medical doctor or a virologist or a scientist or a medical scientist, Enoch Muyanja, and our pastor at iTiS, Dr. Molino. But in their field, They have traditional healers and herbal healers. True?
Mm.
When you have malaria, there is a herbal healer who is going to give a report. And also, Muyanja and Molino will also come and give a report on the same thing, malaria. Now, the patient who does not have the ability to analyze, first of all, the human body, who has no clue about the human body, who doesn't have any information about sickness, that the two experts in quotes are talking about, okay, will will not have a choice, like I earlier said. But gentlemen, first of all, let me just make this disclaimer. I believe in herbal medicine personally. I do believe in herbal medicine. But my approach to herbal medicine, okay, herbal medicine is applied to a lab report. For me, that is my approach. I go to a scientific lab, okay, the lab gives me a report, and then I apply herbal. After I have gone to the scientific lab, where there are scanners and microscopes and whatever they call it. Then now I can use herbal. And I don't use herbal on each and every situation that I'm going through. No, I don't use that. So in other words, what I'm saying, whenever I have Dr. Morino and Muyanja here, and they have given me a report, and I have Kawaka Ganda here, who has been in the business, Kawaka Ganda, who has been in the business for that long, and he also gives me a report. I am leaning, and especially the thing I'm struggling with is physical. I am leaning more, if not absolutely, to the Dr. Morinos and the Muyanja. Why? Because for them, they have even scanned my broken bone and they are telling me how it has been fractured. They have even demonstrated that. I know Kawaka Ganda can start working on me even from a distance. When I'm at home and he's in Chiboga, he can start. And there's effect. That I know. And I can even feel the effect. Yes, I've seen that. But there are no facts. There is no information. There is no formed data. Processed data is not there. Now, I labored to give you all of that and waste your time trying to communicate what is happening in our field. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say this and again. There are many pastors, many prophets, many apostles, many evangelists, many names, okay? And all those are not theologians. As far as the Bible is concerned, the authority in that book is a theologian. So listen to the theologian, number one. Number two, theologians do not disagree, okay? Do not disagree on the structure, on the ideology. They don't. They might disagree in practice, but they do not disagree on things that matter. To even start creating all these religions that you see, that's not a product of theology. No. That is why you see, because you see who brought this, that's why you see every religion has got its own product of theology. They are teaching their own theology. There's a difference between denominational theology and theology. Theology as a discipline is independent of what the Catholic theology is teaching, independent of what the SDA theology is teaching. It is independent. This is why I keep telling people, let us go back to theology. Let us, all of us, drop our denominations and go back to what theology says. This is the problem. So it is not like, you see, in accounts, the auditors actually and the accountants agree. But in theology, no, because they're not doing theology. You can't say that I went to school and I spent there 5 years, and then you are telling me that Bujingo said. Who is Bujingo? Who is Bujingo theologically? Don't tell me that Reverend so and so said, Kakande said. These are not theologians. I am discussing theological issues. The brother is in healing and is in supplying water. These are different things. Such things do not happen in accounts. There is no accountant who is going to give a report and is going to introduce with a prayer. That is not accounts. What are verses doing in an accounting report? Verses, biblical verses or Quranic verses. But in our field, you find all those charlatans. So charlatans should not actually paint us as not professional and actually reduce theology to herbal. These are herbalists. These are herbal theologians.
Bob.
Isaiah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kakati,
Anyway.
yo obi alisenga
Let Peter first finish.
yo obi alisenga wa disagrees with what you're saying.
Go Peter.
Alisengawa did not study theology. Alisengawa studied in service. The package of in service is institutional biblical study. Institutional. He studied Ellen G. White. You imagine things that I studied for 3 years or 5 years. The Alisengawas hit the university and studied for 2 weeks. Alisengawa is not my hobby. Alisengawa is not a theologian. He's a herbalist. He's a herbalist.
Yo obi alisengawa.
Ama Bob, you come. Bob.
Yeah, for me, I just wanted to comment on what Mr. Servide said of knowing and believing. Is it data to be known or believed? I think that was the issue. And my response, just adding on what Isaiah said, both of the two factors, both factors, it's a choice. One has to make a choice to know and to believe. And to know, the Bible is also very clear that how can they believe unless someone tells them, okay? So the knowing is the first phase, which is also a choice. I've seen people trying to preach to, convert people, to preach them to believe. And someone, wherever you open your mouth and you are preaching, someone say, sagala kumanya, So at that point, someone has already made a choice not to know even what you're telling them, not to know about what you're telling them. So it's a choice even to know. So information is out there. That is why people specialize, they choose. Otherwise, we have 24 hours a day. If you're saying you're going to know about everything, you will not. I mean, as you gave an example that the videos on YouTube, you can watch them and die even without finishing them. So this is why we pick what we want to know about. So it's a choice. So first of all, you make a choice. Now, once you know something, then believing is a result of how your knowing is related to the direction you want to take. If you want to believe what is being told to you, you can test it now and believe. The Bible test and see, test and believe. Okay, this is why we believe. I'll give an example again, just to talk to Isaiah and not to discourage him about his herbal belief, but we almost lost our last born because of some of these things. We were in hospital And after giving birth, someone came and advised my wife, oh, to prevent this kid from getting, the Walker story, probably no. After they are born, you have to take, there's a concoction, a traditional concoction that Baganda, from the Baganda group. I think there's ghee and ovakatiko and what. Then you pass it over the baby's lips and on the kundi, this section where the umbilical cord has been cut. Okay. And when you do that, the kid will not disturb you, they will not cry, like I'm forgetting the right word to use in English, but anyway, I hope you much take it. So, and I had cautioned my wife about these things. And if she gets to get this recording, I'm sure I won't be in trouble, but I can talk about it because we share experiences. I cautioned my wife about it, that these things are dangerous. But I don't know how she was convinced. And when I was not to look, because I was not there to observe, she sneaked and put this thing on the kids' umbilical cord where it had been cut. Within 24 hours, the kid was going to die. They took stuff in the lab, checked. She had got a toxification, like she had been like a poisoned, like the stomach just bulged. Man, we had to go in X-ray. We had to do all these things, only to realize that this concoction which had been applied in the guise of preventing the kid from getting those effects of crying, just ended up poisoning. Now, this is the issue with traditional or herbal medicine. There's a way it works. We don't argue with it, but modern medicine has optimized, its medicine. Take 3 doses. This is, if you take more than this, it will become poison. If you take this, but herbal, we do not have data, and we started this thing with data. How much data do these herbal people keep that the people that they heal, or even those that they give these things, they don't go and actually become worse, and maybe 2 or 3 actually heal from that thing using their medicine? We know that herbal, even modern medicine, comes from this collection of these herbal herbs. Okay, but I'm just saying that information out there, you have to have a way of authenticating it and believing it with the current knowledge that we have, such that we don't make errors, such that we are not exposed in this era. Information is available out there that we can search, we can digest it, and we can come to our conclusion rather than just following the bandwagon. Okay, so this is something I wanted to caution those who are into herbal about. It's okay, it's good, but now approach it in a modern way. Yes, as I said, you go and get diagnosed in the lab that now I have malaria. Then now the herbal guy can give me their herbal meds. But this herbal medicine they are giving me, how am I sure that the dose they are giving me is not going to kill me? Okay, can they show me numbers that they treated 100 people, gave them the same dose, and these 100 people, all of them were healed? Or they don't know that 50% of those developed complications, and I may be among the 50. So I wanted just to comment on that, about knowing and believing in these data things. Thank you.
Yeah, the thing we're wrestling with is credibility of all source of the information. Like I said, in the accounting profession, I guess because they have these very rigid standards, maybe it's possible, which is not always the case with all sorts of information. Now with AI, you can generate a video, you can generate anything, you can write an article in 1 minute, you can write a book in 2 minutes, So there are all sorts of experts. And because they have a following, now we have gone into the social media side of things. Because they have a following, they are believable. On so and so's channel, he hosted this expert and they say this. Oh, this guy reads a lot of books, so he must be right. Oh, this guy is a professor of political science. So, those kinds of things. So how do we, I'm still on the credibility issue. How do we know that this source, these ones are wasting my time, and so on and so on? Isaiah, you want to say something? I think I saw you.
No, let others come in. But if
because all of us here consume information, by the way, especially if you're on social media. By the time you scroll through your timeline, Most of it is even sponsored. You find sponsored ads, click this, what? This thing worked for this one. You want to make money? Here is, I have a formula, pay $1,000. I give you the formula for being a millionaire, and so on and so forth. Tom, you've been quiet. Do you want to say something? Information, disinformation, misinformation. Now we're on the social media side of things. We are currently in the transfer season, those of us who support football. There's a guy called Fabrizio Romano. You know that guy? When it comes to this window of transfers, he's always posting things. And I think he has, last time I checked, he had like over 5 million followers just on X. That's because in the past, he has called things and they've actually happened. This club is going to buy this person and it actually happens. This club is going to buy this person and it actually happens. So he has established his credibility in that. So does having got some decisions or some information in the past make you a credible source? Because we know a prophet in this town who has got a few speculations correct, and because of that, he has a following every Tuesday. People sit to listen to what's going to happen. So is history a good predictor of the future? Pedro, in your field, you have to publish peer reviews and so on and so forth. Let me first start.
Can I comment?
Let me start with Peter. Then I'll come to
I'm going to get off. Just can you give me just 30 seconds?
Okay.
I'm going to get off.
That's fine.
I just wanted to bring in the issue of numbers, okay, for us, and I'm giving an example for us in research and statistics. Those who know how statistics work, I'm sure Jethro, you also know. The issue of numbers. For example, if I'm to publish something and I used a sample size of 5 individuals, there's some statistics that I cannot apply for that data to be authentic, okay? So that is why they say, okay, for this statistics, you need to have at least maybe 30 or 40 or 100 sample size. The N has to be greater than 100 for us to believe this kind of notion you want to bring. So this is what I wanted to comment on you when you talked about, a certain preacher making these predictions and they come to pass. When we come to statistics and numbers, you cannot say because one person, because they say even a dead clock is right, a dead watch or whatever is right at any one time. At one time when the nodes move, they will settle at that place where that clock is actually dead or stopped. So it is possible for someone to randomly predict or say something that will come to pass, but that is not the only thing. For us who are authenticating data, we are going to jump on and say, oh, we should believe everything he says now. I just wanted to bring in that number issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
The schools.
You authors, you normally put a line, 20 million copies sold. Translated in 50 languages. Continue, Peter.
The school system has taught us what we call epistemic. Let me call it epistemic authority. For example, if you are in language or in linguistics, how can you publish a book in linguistics, especially in what we call structural linguistics, that is syntax, phonetics, phonology, semantics, morphology. Those are fundamentals of language. How can you say anything about that without mentioning Noam Chomsky? We call them cardinal authors. How can you say anything about structures of linguistics and you've not said anything about Noam Chomsky? Okay, so we call them, those are cardinal Okay, they said fundamental things about language. That's what school has taught us. I wonder how credible that is also. For example, if we go to Pastor White's field, who is the author? Who is the authority that Paul is quoting? What are the cross references of Mr. Paul? and if somebody says Ezekiel, maybe Lamentations, maybe Jeremiah, then one asks, then from whom does Jeremiah quote or cross-reference? So I don't know. I think the concept of authority, I don't know. Is it attitudinal? Is it a social cultural phenomenon? Is it social culturally established? Okay, I think it all goes back to believing. That credibility is believing, and believing or knowing is subject to ability. Do you have the ability to analyze the information? If you do not have the ability to analyze the information, then you are at the mercy of those who claim authority over it. That's what I can say at the moment.
Thank you, Peter. Mushwezi? Petson?
Yes. Hello.
Johan?
Yes. Yeah. The credibility. I think it's an obligation for the informer to ensure that his information, whatever information is giving out, is as much authentic as possible. So the obligation first is with the informer, then the recipient can verify after. I'll give an example. In 2001, there's a company that was called Enron. I think you people have heard of this scandal, the biggest scandals in accounting. The Enron scandal. It was a very, very big corporation, like how you see the apples. It was dealing in fuel. I think one of the biggest fuel companies by then. Doing very well, they are performing very well financially, and all of a sudden, one day it just woke up, and the company had collapsed. They had been cooking books for like the last 10 years, and they're doing this. They would cook their books, and then they would bring. Yes, like for 10 years, they would cook the books, and then they are being audited by the biggest audit firm in the world. It was called Arthur Anderson. So they would cook books, then they would go and pay auditors to stamp on their books that their books are okay. People were investing in these companies. People were investing in this company. And just one day, the company just collapsed. So it was coming from cooking books. It was the biggest accounting scandal ever. When you look at the financial crisis of 2008, the same thing that they're doing on the Wall Street, they would go and dish out subprime loans, and then they go and pay these, they're called rating companies like the Moody's and S&Ps, that you rate that these loans are okay, they're AAA. And investors would buy because of the information that has been given to them. And you see what it brought? It brought the financial crisis. So may I think that the author is the obligation of the author to make sure that the information that you're giving is authentic as much as possible. That's why, like in our profession, they try and train us to become objective, to become independent, to become integrity. I think the same thing about doctors. Yeah, the information that you're giving, make sure that it is the right information. Do not deceive. Now, Peter's discussion today. Peter brought a discussion, but his main intention, I think, was about this thing about God. I'm giving this. I'm talking about my point from the point where I started from. That the author has to make sure that whatever he gives to the public is authentic. And I think the discussion Peter is bringing out is this information about God. So it is the duty of God to ensure that the information that we get as the consumers of this information is authentic, and that is his obligation. Like how it is an obligation for an accountant to make sure that you produce authentic financial statements that are not biased. God has to make sure that we as believers receive this information in which is authentic. I always told you that thing. Who this guy said that Nsubuga, Stephen Nsubuga said that if the thing is that serious, then God would not just be messing around with our lives. So if let's say going to heaven is that serious, then he better come out and pronounce himself, because we are here. You have a Bujingo, you have a Kakande, you have Sengawa, you have Isaiah, you have Kenya. We're just there. We are all consuming from the same information, and we don't know what is right, what is wrong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pedson. I think in the beginning, when we were trying to define information, we said there's also an intention of the person producing the information. So you cannot take you cannot take away the intention of the person producing the information. You've just given us a good example of the auditors and accountants whose intention was to commit fraud.
For 10
Therefore,
years.
they produce these doctored accounts. And I think you cannot necessarily say that it is the responsibility of the person giving the information, because there are different motives. What we said is the person receiving or consuming this information must have the ability to also do their own analysis and research, or corroborate it, like they say. I think you can't take away that responsibility. Otherwise, then, we will be taken for a ride, because people have different motives for writing and producing. It's all about money.
Jet, you see, okay, sorry, just 1 second. You see, I'll give an example. We are on the call here, and no one is an accountant. So if I'm the treasurer for iTiS, you expect me to do the right books of accounts for iTiS. Now, you may not even not understand the figures. All you need to see is that the figures are prepared in the right way. Now, the duty, the obligation is in the one who is preparing those accounts. And by the way, even when you make a wrong decision based on the information that I've given you, it is me who is supposed to even be charged, not you who has consumed the information. So the author of the information has to make sure that the information that is being put out there, whether in the papers, whether in a book, whether where, it is authentic. The obligation lies with the informer, the author, the authority of the information.
When the motivation is money, people will put out false information. For example, there are so many people selling online courses, how to make people rich, how to make passive income over how much a month. They produce their bank statements. But really, the money they are actually making is from these gullible people paying for the courses, not the actual stuff they're teaching them. So again, I insist. Anyway, Isaiah, as we bring this to a close, we have only 5 minutes. Just kind of wrap up this thing about information, processing, sources, credibility, belief, and knowing. Just kind of wrap up this thing.
Yeah, I think one, we thank God that we are surrounded with data. There is data all over. Even in relationships, there is something called red flags. Have you ever heard about that?
Yes.
Now, red flags is data. It is upon the consumer to be excited and ignore the data and continue to suffer in the future. But data actually presented itself. So that's the first thing. Now, it is upon us to start training ourselves in data analysis. Yeah, we should start. Before you expose yourself to information, you try as much as you can to expose yourself to analysis. That's why we in philosophy, we are obsessed with critical thinking. We are very much obsessed with critical thinking. Recently, I was talking in a certain group. I don't know whether Peterson is that. Is Peterson in Think Critically?
Yes, is there.
Good, brilliant. So I was talking to Kato, and because Kato is an atheist, I got to know that yesterday. So he knows quite a number of those debaters. And then he told, when I responded, he said, you sound like Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson is someone who, when you ask him, Jordan, what is a spoon? Then when he's going to respond, he says, now that depends on what you mean when you say spoon. Spoon could be a cutlery. But you see, besides the the excesses of Jordan, the idea of Jordan's circular reasoning is, do we understand what we say, first of all? Do we understand what we see? Are we paying attention? Are we even caring to analyze the data? Because if we don't care to analyze the data, then dealing with information will be too late, because information is processed data that has been processed by another person. So in other words, you're just going to be a follower. That's the absurd bit of this whole discussion. So, and this is why I keep telling people that before you open up your Google, you need to be trained in understanding how information and in times data on the internet, how it is processed. You need to understand that. You are watching a documentary, yes, fine. Which comes from which company? Because these industries these documentaries have got industries. They have got companies that sponsor these documentaries. What is their philosophy? Whenever a movie, let me use a movie. Whenever a movie ends, it has got that list of actors and then the company. Sometimes they even give their philosophy. But who watches those details? None of us. Ours was to watch the movie and go. But the movie has actually informed you, unfortunately. But you have not even analyzed the informant. So this is how we get hooked to this whole thing. And now we are in an era that is known as post-truth. And I think we should come back and talk about that. So for me, moderator, God could not be any clearer. Unfortunately, his information was hijacked by those who have got personal interests, and people have started getting bored and they have started dropping off from this. Then others are fighting even what they don't know. When you talk to atheists, you will actually understand that they are not even willing to understand what their position is stating. Majority of these atheists, at iTiS here, we keep calling each and every one. For instance, if you are Isaiah and you found out that this whole Jesus business is nonsense, why are you running away from those who are discussing Jesus? Why don't you come and debate them and present your view? Why do you go mute and distance yourself from these who are willing? Because at iTiS, we are not religious people. We are willing to listen and to understand. Why don't you bring your newfound truth and debate it? And this is why I commend you, by the way, Peterson, because I don't want to commend you when you die, because I know you will die before me. I would like to... One of the things that I appreciate about Peterson, he disagrees with this whole business, but he's present. This is why I have issues with... Yes, and he presents his side. Why would a brilliant man like Stephen, my brother Stephen, go silent and go mute and distance himself? You bring your argument on the table. The greatest atheists that I know are two. What's the name of that Matamabuku guy? Hitchens. Hitchens, he passed on. Another one is Dawkins. There's also another two. Those guys are always in debate. They don't just dismiss, these religious things are stupid, and they keep quiet. No, they are always debating, organized debates, and they present their issue. You don't have to convert to Christianity, but bring and present your issue. But people just run away, and then they claim to be informed. How are you informed when you are just alone? How can you have information that is not challenged? And then you claim that this information is authentic. It is not tried, tested. It is not. So I think that is the problem. We could go on and on, but we'll bring back this discussion. Thank you. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much. That's all we had time for today. Thank you for joining in. This has been In Truth and in Spiritual of Worship Fellowship. I've been your moderator, standing in for Peter. Jethro is my name. We'll be back on Thursday with a social topic, which will be communicated in due course. May God bless you until we meet again.
Bye.